Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. So people may not know this, but it's about 3 in the morning tomorrow for you in China. You just got off a plane from China, so thanks for putting us in your day. And I see all these cameras here that are really interested in workforce development and getting this right.
Every time I talk about workforce, they all show up.
All the workforce crowd. Let me start with China for a moment. I'm interested in China because China has been held up by many as being the big competitive challenge, that it was the country getting things right. It was both having tons of manufacturing investment coming in, and it was matching with the skill sets of its people. And I'm interested in what insights you may have gotten in China. We think China is still a challenge for us.
Well, the answer is yes and no. It is a challenge because they're doing what certain things we did and have dropped off, meaning, I kind of say it two ways simply. Well, we will always go right if we invest in our people and invest in our capacity of our economic strength. And what I mean by that, one of the things that I've tried to do in the city of Chicago is both on skill level, and this I think gets to the larger point that we're going to talk about, is in both from our community colleges, Skills for Chicagoland, or the Cook County Chicago workforce development, is focus people on both education, skill, and capacity for the jobs of today and the careers of tomorrow. And if we do that, if you're going on to University of Chicago, Northwestern, DePaul, Loyola, any of these schools here, or postgraduate work, you're going to be, it's about as good as insurance you can get, especially in a period of time where you earn what you learn. We've not updated as a country where the 21st century economy needs, meaning our educational system stops at 12th grade from a commitment, and yet the jobs of tomorrow at a minimum require 2 years post-high school. And what we've tried to do with those three entities is, in short, give everybody up to 14th grade education. You go on to DePaul or whatever. So that's our fundamentals. Second is infrastructure. You got to have a 21st century infrastructure to move on a 21st century economy level. And if you have a 20th century foundation, you're going to move at a 20th century space and time where everybody else is moving much faster. Now, you ask that question also. Yes, at one level, China's a competitor, but there's nothing that they're doing that if we don't do what's right here first, we can't not only compete, but we can win.
Because a lot of people talk about manufacturing coming back to the United States, that some of the skill sets are coming back, and that there's sort of a new opportunity that a life in the manufacturing sector is not a bleak one. Because a lot of people talking, mayors and governors I've interviewed have said that one of their biggest challenges is actually getting people to have faith and confidence that it's a good profession to go into.
Yeah, well, the key word is it used to be a job, but today it's a career. If you take, we've done two things to prepare, I think, the city to really advance in advanced manufacturing, which is where I think the United States and particularly the city of Chicago can compete. And, you know, just by way of reference, if the agreement between the UAW and Ford is approved accordingly, you know, we not only gained 4 years ago a third shift at the Ford plant here in Chicago, they're going to be adding jobs to that plant, and they have the confidence to do this because of the skilled workforce. And that plant in Chicago exports to more markets around the world than any other Ford plant in all of North America. That's number one. Two things. One, we sought and secured the digital manufacturing hub, which Siemens is a part of here in the city of Chicago, which is the brainchild for the United States on manufacturing. Two, we have 7 community college campuses, second largest in the United States, and Richard J. Daley is the school for advanced manufacturing. The days of just making widgets, kind of repetitive motion, is over. Manufacturing jobs that are in the Chicago area and our camp we have a potential to compete and win for require a minimum of 2-year post-high school education where your understanding and capacity and ability to handle computers is the manufacturing of tomorrow. And we're creating the kind of educational and research, the brains and brawns that go into making Chicago most competitive in manufacturing. Now, I don't know if the data is current, but at a point in the last 2 years that if you took Richard J. Daley and drew a 10-mile radius circle around the school, there was about 14,000, 10,000 jobs with help wanted signs. And making sure that people see that it's not just a job, but it's a good-paying job with a career potential is how you get people to reframe their mind's eye from making widgets, just a job, to a career and a path to a pretty secure middle-class standard of living. And it's still available.
We're going to be talking about the Institute later today with someone from the Institute. But when you look at it, and I know you're sort of a take-no-prisoners sort of mayor.
I heard you're a take-no-prisoners sort of journalist.
You know, in a take-no-prisoners kind of mayor, who is your competition in the United States? Who do you have to beat? Who's doing it better than Chicago, if anyone?
Well, I mean, short answer, no one. No. I would say to you, I can't say that the competition's limited. In the world we live in today, I don't look at it as it's 30 years ago, let me say it this way, and I apologize if I'm just off the plane from China, so I apologize if these are not coherent sentences with a verb, an adjective.
I'm enjoying.
I bet you
are. I needed to have a little bit of an edge.
30 years ago, you could have said Chicago versus Siemens. They have a
right.
healthcare manufacturer in Hoffman Estates. Chicago versus Hoffman Estates. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you could have said it's Chicago, Illinois versus Long Beach, California, or Los Angeles, California. Today, it's Chicago, and you can look at any city around the world, given that ability to make something, produce something, distribute something, is mobile. And so I don't kind of say, okay, who am I competing? Now, what I do say, and the way I try to have our team, not just me, but our team, is what are the best practices out there? What are our strengths? How do we make the most of where we are? So
right.
we have a good Midwest work ethic, incredible educational skilled workforce. We're centrally located with a very integrated distribution and transportation system. 30% of all goods, both by rail, runway, or road, come in and out of the city of Chicago in the United States of America. Sometimes we never let it out.
All of those have been true for some time.
Yeah,
so how does a mayor like you change the game?
Well, one, secure the digital manufacturing lab, UI Labs. That makes the city of Chicago the center of research. Why is Siemens all of a sudden now moved their office into the city of Chicago and then brought some research? You have the UI Labs. That's going to, not only it's going to create a backbone of research, and therefore, who knows what idea will be spun off into a new company. Second, a workforce at Richard J. Daley Community College that gives you state-of-the-art training, that the industry that's hiring is putting the training together. If I can do the research and the workforce, the big challenge around the world right now with an aging workforce worldwide, there's a great story about it today, is everybody's looking for the security of the best trained, best educated workforce. So creating the research and the research that comes from that with the best trained, educated workforce, and knowing our central location with a 21st century distribution logistics operation, I think best positions the city of Chicago. And then ultimately, not being scared to ask. So like when UAW, when Ford had 2 shifts at the Ford plant, I was on the phone with them. They wanted to produce a police vehicle. They moved the facility out of Canada, created a 3rd shift. We were the first city to made an order from that factory made here.
Wow.
And we wrote letters to police departments across the country. Ford's making police cars here.
So where are your folks for a police car?
And I'm yes. And now, given what's happened, with the UAW PAC being voted on, they're going to add they're going to do certain things that's going to make an investment there at that plant and add hundreds of jobs that come with it. That is best positioning Chicago. And it's not an accident that the factory by Ford on the south side of Chicago exports to more markets around the world than any other city. Centrally located, the ability to move goods and services with rapid on-time delivery.
Let me ask you, how many of you, just raise your hand, are involved in some element of workforce development, training? Okay, I needed to gauge how many of you.
You should ask it the other way. How many people are not?
Yeah. I needed to gauge how many people I might tick off with this question. But
We'll put you into a witness protection plan at the end.
I hear you're good at that in Chicago.
Do I get into trouble with an answer, or is it just a question?
So no, you'll be fine. But you and I are both from D.C. I mean, you and I are both spent time in Washington. When I worked for Senator Jeff Bingaman in the 1990s. We had workforce programs in New Mexico, and honestly, they sucked. They did not deliver.
Look at that. He's
they
talking
were
like a Chicagoan already.
Yeah. So
you've only been here 12 hours. That's great.
So I guess my question is, maybe there have been real changes since the 1990s in how this is done. But workforce is a very big part of this, and I know it's a big agenda item for you. Tell us if you think it's screwed up, which I happen to know you do, and how you're changing it.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, but I'm not going to say them. So let me say, here's how I looked at it. I tried this when I was a congressman, tried it as chief of staff, and I made the changes here. At the federal level, I'm doing it by guess. I used to know this hard, but I think there's anywhere from 39 to 48, 49 job training skilled programs, all trying to do the same thing.
At the federal level?
At the federal level. And it drove local to be as messed up. So the first, that's number one. And two, we're not focused, is probably as important a messed up point, we're not focused on the jobs today and the careers tomorrow. So we went about systematically 4.5 years ago of consolidating and bringing as best we could focus. Mm-hmm. So we have kind of 3 job training, skilled workforce education that I kind of generically say take people from the 12th grade to the 14th grade, which is where 90% of all the jobs require a minimum of 2 years post-high school. First and foremost, our community colleges. We have 7. Each school is focused on the most promising area for jobs. So Malcolm X, healthcare. Mm-hmm. Olive Harvey, transportation, distribution, logistics. Richard J. Daley, advanced manufacturing. Wright, IT. Harold Washington, professional services. Kennedy King, hospitality and culinary. And then Truman is going to be is in the social services education. Most importantly, then, is asked the industry come in and tell us what is the training, what is today that you're looking for. Help us design the curriculum to fit what you are looking. So it's one thing to bring it to focus, kind of like the German model, and then the industry has to be a partner so that what you're training people so that the resume gets them in the door. And if you are Rush Presbyterian Hospital and you're part of the curriculum, you're more likely to hire that nurse than not. If you're a bank and you're part of Harold Washington's professional services, you're more likely to, when you see Harold Washington, you're more likely to say, sit down, rather than we'll call you when there's an opening. Number 2, in that level, we did that with skills for Chicagoland, that Greg Brown from Motorola Solution chairs, and then county and city coming together. So the whole focus was bring consolidation so you didn't have to have a PhD to find out which job training skill of the 49 programs worked for you. And then 2, make it relevant to what industry who does the hiring is looking for. And to me, that was the best way to position Chicago. Make it easy, make it simple, make it relevant to the jobs of today and I say careers tomorrow. I would say then, Steve, if I could take your question, not just to workforce development, but to the larger point. 20 years ago, the high school degree could have gotten you somewhere, but really wasn't ready. It's clear today everybody, 90-some-odd%, are going to need 2 years of post-high school education or more. And yet, across the country, nobody was modernizing their educational system for the economy that we were in. And China won't eat our lunch if we do our homework right. We'll win. But if we don't do our homework, no guarantee on the outcome. So that's why a couple things at our community colleges. We announced last year, started this year, you get a B average in high school, community college is free. Open to everybody. I don't care what your parents' status is, citizenship.
That's the case today in Chicago?
In Chicago.
Wow.
You get a B average. One of my favorite stories, some kids, I got a B. I said, no, B average, but you're well on your way now with that B, okay? You got to get a B average, not 3.0. But, and if your parents' quote-unquote legal status is not clear, we don't care. So you get a B average in Chicago Public Schools, community college is free. Cost will not be a prohibitive factor. If you're going back and you want to get a job, but you need the skills for that job, skills for Chicagoland or Cook County, Chicago workforce development.
Partnered with companies.
Partnered with companies. So it is all linked up. All three of these are linked up to what Siemens, Harris Bank or BMO Harris, whether you're the Ford auto plant. Everybody's going to be, everything, Olive Harvey is linked up with UPS, FedEx, Norfolk Southern, CSX, CTA, Chicago entity, and Walmart from the most modern logistics, distribution, transportation capacity. That, to me, is how we make sure that you could have been a city 20 years ago on a kindergarten to 12th grade model. We're going to a pre-K to college model. And if everybody can if we can be a city where everybody has a minimum of a 14th grade education, Chicago will win. That's how I'm in the best position, Chicago, and the people that make up this great city for the 21st century. And there's nothing that China's doing, India's doing, or Germany's doing that if we don't do what's in our self-interest, we can't win at.
I want to tell all those people who raised their hands in workforce, and I'm not anti-workforce, just so you know, I would love to hear the vignettes from you during the day of how it's changed in the last 15 years, what's working, what's not working, vignettes. I mean, I think it's one of the most important areas. It sounds very promising, what you're doing. Let me just ask you, we're getting near the end, but I'm interested in when you once shared with me, I think it was you saved about $18 million by looking at how UPS and FedEx trucks were turning in the city. And you brought this grid and you brought data, and everyone knows you're a data mayor, and you were able to sort of save money in the way garbage collection was done and put that money into education. So do you remember that? That was
not towards education, but towards efficiency in the garbage, and then offer recycling citywide.
Yeah, I see. So that was a fascinating example of a data mayor, how you would sort of looked at data. Do you think there are opportunities in the jobs area? I've talked to Jeff Weiner of LinkedIn a little bit about the middle skills arena and trying to do a better job of matching people with certain kinds of skill sets, helping them tell their stories differently, and connecting them with opportunity. I'm wondering if you've have you dived into that at all?
Let me go back to the one fact is the city we used to pick up garbage based on our political map. So each alderman controlled the garbage, and as you can imagine, map making in a city isn't done by efficiency model. Okay, but the city had debated it for a while, but never had the political will to then say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. It's going to be fewer right turns, fewer left turns, straighter lines, which saved money and time. It saved us $18 million. We then took the $18 million and brought recycling, which only half the city had, to the entire city. There are other things we do with data collection. This is more about data. Rat abatement. You can now predict where there's going to be a rat problem, so we use that data to go abate before the problem results because it's more expensive on the back end than on the front end.
You connect data to rats.
No, that's not what I said. That's how you get the mistake. What I said was there are flashing red lights, so to say, that you know that if this data happens, you in 3-4 days are going to have a rat problem. But eradicating it on this end versus starting to see the flashing red lights here and then go and abate is a lot cheaper, more effective. Another way of using data. To your point, there wasn't really something. I was steeped in this issue as a congressman representing the North Side, where I had Wright Community College and Truman in one of the 2 of the 7 community colleges. Look, let me kind of reverse engineer. You and I are here because we have 2 things in common. Parents who loved us and put an emphasis on our education. The rest was up to you and I.
Right.
We live in a period of time where you earn what you learn. We live in a period of time where there's a massive competition for skills and education. And to get a job that's not just a job but a career, you have to go to minimum to 14th grade, 90%. So those are the facts. I'm the mayor with the 2nd largest community college system, 115,000 folks. Yet our educational system and quote unquote my responsibility ended at 12th grade, yet the economy was at 14th grade. So I just said a simple thing. I know what I was provided. and I know how it helped me get to where I am. What are we doing as mayor, what am I, in the city, doing to put the pieces together? I can't make up for love or not. I can't make up for emphasis on education by your family, but I can make sure that the building blocks are there. And I also consider that like what I just did with our Chicago Star Scholarship on the B average. If cost is a prohibitive factor, we'll take care of that. It's free. You have your job, earn a B average. And I have to make sure that the systems, quote unquote, are there to make sure that everybody then can make the most. And I'll conclude on this one, on this slide in question, with this one anecdote. I was at 35th Street on the L, shaking hands. We were about to announce we're going to do this major redevelopment of the entire Red Line South. Shut it down, rebuild 11.5 miles of track, every station. Meeting a young man, I'm shaking his hand on the way to go to make this announcement with the governor. And I said, what are you doing? He says, oh, I'm going to work. I said, where do you work? He goes, oh, I go to Target. I'm on my way to Target. And I said, well, where are you coming from? He said, I was at Harold Washington. I said, great. I said, what are you studying? He says, business administration. And I walked away and I said, he is doing everything you would want. Working, I can't say full-time or whatever, but he's working, holding a job, and he's going to school. Am I doing everything I'm supposed to do for him? He's holding up his side of the bargain. Are we doing ours? Does Harold Washington provide him the same reputation that Sarah Lawrence and Northwestern provided me? I mean, when I walked out from Sarah Lawrence, I walked out with, liberal arts degree, but I walked out with the reputation of Sarah Lawrence. When I walked out of Northwestern, I walked out what? In classical rhetorical studies. Now, there's a job getter. But I walked out with the reputation of Northwestern.
Right.
I am responsible to him on the reputation of Harold Washington. So that when he walks out and it says Harold Washington, HR says, sit down. Not, we'll call you when there's a job opening.
That's a big problem for many people. HR departments are not often willing to take the risks.
They are, correct. So here's the premise. If Siemens is part of the advanced manufacturing, or in our high schools, with our P-Tech high schools, will they hire somebody that came out of the Siemens school or the school where Siemens was in the curriculum? And the bet is, it's a bet, more likely yes than no. We owe, and one of the things I'm also providing companies, you come in on the curriculum, you come in on the training, we're going to make sure that the school is right for you, so when that person says Harold Washington, it says Malcolm X, it says Skills for Chicagoland, you can have the confidence, since you were part of the development of either the training or the education, that they are trained to your specs. It's good for them, and it's good for the young man or woman who put their hopes and dreams on that education. And I, as mayor, and we as a city, owe the people, the 115,000 who have taken their bet on Harold Washington, on Malcolm X, on Olive Harvey, that it's going to help them get somewhere.
Just to wrap up, and then we'll give the audience a couple of minutes. Your job of governing such a large territory in which equity.
Does Atlantic provide water?
I can
or
use.
Is we're getting like
throw us some water down here, Casey.
No, don't say that in Chicago. Could anybody hand me some water? Okay, go ahead.
No, but basically on the this broad subject of running a city, and whether it's folks have looked at this question of investment in the city.
I'm listening to everything you're saying.
Yeah, there we go. And by the way, since I'm going to be spending my afternoon
you want some
up
of my
here,
water
first?
first?
You go ahead and have yours. Yeah.
Let's see how his questions are before he gets any water.
No, but you sit in it. Your dashboard includes a lot of crises, a lot of what people consider to be unfairness, decisions on where one manufacturing plant or the institute goes may look unfair to other folks. You've had some crises in the city recently. I was thinking, when you were here today, just because I've been talking on TV nonstop about ISIS and what just unfolded in Paris, what Brussels is dealing with. And I'm just interested, just as we wrap up, how do you process, as you're trying to move the city forward in constructive ways, how do you deal with the destructive dark side of city management?
Well, first of all, we could take the time we just took in another hour to two.
You're welcome to.
No, it depends how much water I get. Well, first of all, I really don't look at it as a crisis. The core question I ask, whether it's our strength or our challenges, how do you deal with them that help you move the whole city forward? Emphasis on forward and whole, every part. And so there are strengths we have and may not been set up to be where we were fighting below our weight class rather than our potential. So that you have to double down on those strengths. Where you face a challenge, then you have to be able to figure out how can you make that challenge an opportunity to move the city forward. There was a former chief of staff who once said, never allow a good crisis to go to waste. It's the opportunity to do the things you never thought
I think his
were
name
possible.
was Rahm also, right?
Yeah, unbelievably, but he got more sleep than 1 hour coming back from China. So challenges, there are crises, and some of them are crises, but normally on any given day, they're challenges, and the question is, are they opportunities to do what you, on your overall goal and move forward? And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. Second, we just did something, and I'll be doing something later this week as it relates to Paris. I think as it relates to the issue of Syrian refugees. We passed a resolution, and I spoke to this at City Council. We welcome the refugees here. My grandfather was a refugee from pogroms in Eastern Europe. I don't think America's finest hour was when it turned the St. Louis boat with Jewish kids away. Its finest hours. I don't think when we suspended habeas corpus, we were doing great. I don't think when we had the Alien Sedition Act or the Japanese internment. And at every point we knew that those were wrong because they weren't consistent with who we are. And we operate best when we operate consistent with our values. And I got to be honest, think about this. The grandson of a Jewish immigrant fleeing the pogroms is now the mayor of the city. I think that's our strength as a city. I think that's our strength as a country. And I think, this Wednesday, with the Catholic Church and other aldermen, we're going to be serving Thanksgiving dinner to Syrian refugee families in this city. Because I want them to know that we are a welcoming city, not just in words, but in deeds. And I'd say, I don't know if this will get me in trouble, but what is the difference between that young child of a Syrian refugee who's called Muhammad and a Jewish boy on the St. Louis boat in 1938 who was called Moses? What's the difference between Ishmael or Israel? And I don't think, I grew up in a home where Roosevelt was revered, and my grandfather's probably rolling over in his grave right about now. That was not America's finest hour. And so I do think being a welcoming city in all its aspiration, while you could talk to people's fears, and I understand, and you have to respond to that, and we do that every day, you also have to respond as a city to what our values are. And if we did not, we have families here today, 13 families in Chicago. I think we'll be a better city if those families came here, that they know that they can give their children a chance at a tomorrow that's better, in the same way that Chicago provided my grandfather the chance to give his kids, himself, and then therefore his grandchildren, a chance at a better tomorrow. That's how you take a challenge and make it an opportunity to be a better and stronger city.
Can you do that with those that have also lived in your city a long time who feel left behind?
That is a fair question, and that's why, and it's consistent with what you're talking about. Are we doing and I'll give you one anecdote. I hope this illustrates it right. So you heard, what we just did on our community colleges. I know that cost is a big problem. My parents could provide, I can provide for my children. So we've done the best we could as a city to take cost out of being a prohibitive factor for kids going to college. And I've seen it, can't tell you how many times kids have come up to me, parents, that this Chicago Stars now, I never thought I could do this, but I can. And a lot of these kids are kids of immigrants.
Right.
Second, it started with the University of Illinois Chicago, but all 12 institutions in the city have announced if you maintain your B average in community college, they're going to automatically enroll you and give you a discount off tuition. That is making sure that everybody, not just, as you said, the Syrian refugees, but that the education, which all parents put an emphasis on to make sure, because they know how important that is for their kids' future, that we as a city make sure that we're doing everything we can. And we're not going to be better if we say, yes, we're a welcoming city with refugees, but you haven't done X. We don't get it always right, but we are working at getting it right all the time. And pitting one element against another is not the way you move a city, the whole city, forward. And if we're striving and people know that we're trying at that, more often than not, collectively, we're going to get it right than wrong.
Terrific. Let me just take a couple of questions right up here. Those that have comments, questions. Yes, right here. And we have a microphone there for you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My name is Tulu Shakufar. I'm a professor of bioengineering at University of Illinois in Chicago. I would like to know where do you see the future of biomanufacturing and bioprinting? My research is in the field of organ printing, artificial organ and artificial tissue, and I would like to know how people such as myself can make Chicago in the frontiers of 3D bioprinting, and how can we make that a bold happening? Thank you very much.
Do you two work together? She's also in 3D printing in your area, so you two should meet. Go ahead, Rahm.
I heard two parts, so I don't want to. On the bio side, back up a little. We had 4 years ago, we had 0 innovation spaces where people starting with a startup could go work. We now have 11 of them.
Wow.
And I'm kind of proud of this, but 1871, and I see Howard Tillman here, was rated the best innovation space in the United States of America, which is over the Merchandise Mart.
Wow.
But right next door, we did this a year ago, we started because software development is different than a pharmaceutical or biomedical device. So we started a space called Matter. And if you have a product coming out of U of I, Northwestern, University of Chicago, Loyola, it's a space just in the biomedical area because your needs are not 6 months, second round IPO. FDA approval, slightly more difficult. So it's set up specifically for that. So you can take an idea out of the U of I, out of University of Illinois, Chicago, move it to a space for entrepreneurship and development. That's number one. On the 3D printing, that is exactly why I went after the Digital Manufacturing Lab, the UI Lab. So if that, you won't be able, or your university, alone to be able to take an idea and then therefore mold something or be able to create a 3D product for it. But let me give you one example. This does get a little on nerdiness of your mayor. I think I'm doing this by memory. So across our library system, which is one of the reasons the neighborhood libraries was rated number 1, was we have media labs. And either brain doctor from Loyola was trying to create a mold for his surgery. And they went to the Chicago Public Libraries, one of our neighborhood libraries, that has the 3D printing, and actually created it. So if there's a long line at the UI Labs, I'll tell you any one of the 80 neighborhood libraries that have that facility. So those are the two capacities to actually address your specific question. But it sounds like I actually want to be an investor in your venture, most importantly.
That's great. Question over here. Yes, right there by the pool.
Hello, my name is Raj Krishnan. I work for Microsoft. I also teach at Illinois Institute of Technology. You mentioned that the future of the jobs are not in the widget making, but with the higher skills. And some of the things that you're doing in terms of the community colleges are the right thing to do. But I think we have even more fundamental need at the school level. I think we need to create interest. I think the biggest challenge we have now is people are not going into these areas because there's no interest among the students. And you mentioned India, China. It's very easy in India, China to redirect a career purely based on economic opportunity. But in this country, that's why it's different about a country, is that unless people are interested in these things, they will not go into higher level education, no matter how many colleges that you have. So what are we doing in terms of creating that kind of an environment and interest among the school students?
Well, there's a couple things. Part of it, and this is not bigger than the mayor, but I can lead an effort, but I can't change it overnight. You know, for a long time, as you said, manufacturing was just a job. We're trying to show people it's more than a job, it's a career that's with a great ticket to a middle-class life. So, in fact, we're organizing now. We have two manufacturing schools, or schools with manufacturing sciences. So they're directly also participating with what's going on at Richard J. Daley. And now we're organizing in the same way that you have field trips to go see one of our museums, to go see the jobs, the factories, and Richard J. Daley and UI Labs, as if that's a field trip, so you're exposed to the potential of what's going on in and around your neighborhood that can give you a chance for a job. And we've got to, in this country, change the image that manufacturing can be a great job, and more importantly, a career that gives you what you're looking for your family. And if to be fair to, I haven't changed that perception in 4 years, but we have made a difference in changing people's opportunities to see it.
Let me just wrap this up. The Digital Manufacturing Institute was a big target of yours. You brought it here. We've got a ton of people in this room that are stakeholders in this conversation of making us smarter, better, creating a deeper bench for innovative people that are there. As you look forward, if we get together 2 or 3 years from now, what will you have wanted to add to the picture that you haven't done yet?
From a research standpoint, or?
You pick.
Well, first of all, that's a harder point, but not a harder point, but a longer.
But it makes you say, what do we not have today that we should have?
Well, there's four areas that we have focused on from research. One is exactly that, the UI Lab, and bringing all our universities together and all their strengths and our companies working on the digital manufacturing backbone. 2, working with the University of Chicago, Argonne, we secured for a 5-year grant for the next generation battery, both production of the battery, but also battery storage, which is going to be the big part of the industry tomorrow. 3rd is we went after and secured an agreement between U of C, Ben Gurion University on water research, and I want to build that up because
Water's a big deal.
Yes, I don't want to say energy is solved, but there's been a lot of emphasis with alternative energy, natural gas discovery, etc. At least right now we have a lot of energy, but around the world there's a big drought, and it's getting worse, and nobody thinks it's different. And the city of Chicago can be well positioned on taking brown water into usable water and conservation technology. We're going to be well positioned in those areas. And then we have secured other things with, and this is relevant, is while I took some heat for it, is Northwestern's brought their next biomedical research facility downtown in the city of Chicago and building that capacity up. Those, I think, what I would say to you is the best thing I'm going to do is we're working now on additional government long-term, not one-time, research grants on the technologies of tomorrow. I'm happy we do a great job of getting companies to come here, relocate here, expand here. It's key. We led the country the last 2 years on corporate relocations. The biggest driver of our dynamism of our economy and our growth is our university system and the workforce it produces, which is why I wanted to make the community college a player on that field. Continue to have our universities attract major research and partnerships is going to be where you're going to get the entrepreneurs, the ideas that become, real solid home runs. I mean, I'll give you an example. CleverSafe, which was a data company that IBM just bought for over $1 billion, came out of the universities. Grubhub, which is a public company, came out of University of Chicago's Business School and Engineering School. So if this was actually, I met with my colleague from China, the mayor Guangzhou, and we were talking. He was going over all the economy, etc. So I said to him, I said, what do you do with your universities? And there was like this pregnant moment. Now, they have 46 in that city. And we have 15, but the second most of any city. And I said, We directly work with our university and university president. Where are you going? What are you focusing on? Loyola just did something big in the
And the
environmental
mayor
side.
there doesn't?
I don't want to say anything ill. I'm not. No. But it was. I mean, it was like the last slide he had, and I said, that to me, our universities. This woman here, she just mentioned what? U of I. He just mentioned IIT. It's not a coincidence. Now, is it great that Siemens moved their operation for data and others into the city? Absolutely. Why? UI, IIT, Loyola, DePaul.
They're all here. I just
Yes.
met them all.
Yeah,
a
I
minute
know.
ago, yeah.
And there's a reason, is because their research, their education, what they train and produce and then look into is exactly what is the dynamics behind Chicago staying as one of the most competitive economies in the world, or drifting off to the second tier. And so when you say 4 or 5 years, pushing our universities to continue to work in partnership, securing the federal grants to make our research that goes on at our universities first in its class.
3 things. Thank you for sharing your vision for
I'm not
Chicago.
sharing my water,
And, yeah,
though.
the water. Yeah,
Your
I
water, you're on
desperately
your own.
want that.
Yeah.
2, thank you for sharing the story about what you're going to be doing on Thanksgiving Day. Very, very powerful. And 3, I want to tell you what a pleasure it is to interview you after a 14-hour trip. You're much more docile and easy to deal with. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, thank you so much.
Thank you.